Great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Torelli. I'm the chairman of the Orange County Industrial Development Agency and Orange County Capital Funding Corporation. Today is Tuesday, June 22nd, and we'll be opening up a committee meeting to concentrate on Accelerator tenants and Accelerator information. So we'll call this our Accelerator Committee, for lack of a better term. At a committee meeting, this is one of our first that we've had as a new board. What we'll be doing is basically getting a debrief from staff and going over a lot of information to determine if there's anything that we need to make decisions upon at our next scheduled meeting, which is the third Tuesday in July. So with that, I will ask for Bill to call a roll real quick so we have it on the record. And then more importantly, we'll go over some handouts that he gave us that are in draft form and have him make a presentation, and we'll ask questions as we see fit so that we are all working from the same, I'll say, sheet of music per se in regards to Accelerator tenants and deals and carrying costs and all that good stuff. So with that, Bill, you'll call a roll.
Okay, we'll have roll call for the Accelerator Committee. Michael Torelli.
Present.
Leslie Pieri.
Present.
Vincent Odock.
Present.
Paul Riskevich.
Present.
All right, all the committee members are here. We also have board member John Dowd in attendance and county attorney Lenny Jett.
Great. We'll also take a look at, we'll try to keep this meeting brief. Committee meeting shouldn't last more than an hour. So we'll ask you to jump right in, Bill, and present to us the information that you have. And I'll ask that board members, if you see something that you have a question on, jump right in and start asking questions. So we'll all have the answers that we need for any pending decisions that we need to do in the future.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. All right, an hour is going to be a struggle. We've obviously been trying to get to this point where we're having these committee meetings. So thanks. This is the first step is actually getting together, addressing these issues. We'll cover what we can this time and then hope to schedule one in the future. What I failed to print out was the agenda. So I'll just mention very quickly, first opening the meeting by the chairman. And then I want to just go through really this spreadsheet, which is a summary of our lease, the leases that we have with our landlords at these various Accelerator sites in our main offices, and then the subleases that we have with our tenants or Accelerator clients. I want to make sure we go through those. You'll notice that there are some columns with when the lease begins and when the lease expires. We'll want to be cognizant of what's coming up over the next several months in terms of leases expiring. We'll have to deal with that. And we have subtenant subleases that are expiring. In some cases, we have a couple that are expired already. So that's part of it. I also want to make sure you have a little familiarity with who the tenants are. I know we've been trying to schedule visits to the Accelerator, and we will do that now that things are settling down for us. And then you'll see firsthand there's nothing better. But I want to make sure you know who's what. And then I really just want to highlight a few issues of things that are just outstanding that we really need to at least begin to discuss and be able to deal with. So let's go through our kind of run through again on this kind of multicolored sheet. The cover page for this really is focused on the leases that we have with our landlords. So right from the top, Middletown Accelerator, we lease from the Danza Group, that's the former, thanks so much, we appreciate that. We lease from the Danza Lesser Group, they are the developers that purchased the Horton Hospital facility, former Horton Hospital, renovated it. And we have what looks like an ICU basically is the Middletown Accelerator. There's a kind of a nursing center in the middle, and then you have all your pods or your offices around them, and nice kind of glass conference room table in there. We've been in that lease since 17, and it doesn't expire until next August, the end of next August. That's Middletown. So I'll just go through the locations themselves. Warwick, that is one location where we pay, it's $1 for the entire term of the lease, not even $1 a year. It's $1 for the entire term. So we don't pay for that, though we do pay CAMS charges for that. And we take care of the tenants that are in there. We have, let's see, technically 3 Accelerator clients that are tenants there. And I'll get to this. New Windsor, there are 3 buildings that are all part of the former Air Force Base campus, frankly. Many of those buildings along the hillside were torn down in recent years, but these are ones that were repurposed. And there are 3 buildings, and we split them up a little bit. 3 of the buildings, our leases expire at the end of this calendar year. three of those buildings, and then the other two at the end of May and June next year, respectively. So that whole accelerator, those locations, really, the leases do expire at the middle of next year, this time next year, I should say. In Newburgh, we rent two buildings there, 603 and 605 Broadway, next to each other, of course. They are where we have a fashion manufacturing pod as well. We entered those leases 605 in July of 18, and then 603 in October of 19. That's when they began, and they don't expire until 2023, July and October, respectively. Highland Falls Accelerator, you know the story there. We won't go there right now, but that is still empty, and our lease technically has entered ends in 25, so it hasn't changed for quite a while. And this has come up before, because it's obviously a topic of conversation about where our headquarters should be. So we have renegotiated that for a smaller space when DocuWare, who's also in the same building, wanted more space, so we have a lower space, but we did sign back on, and that last iteration of the lease was in March 18, and we're in contract in lease until the end of February of 2023. So that's our story there. We can start to leaf through this same packet. The next one looks like this, with the most columns in blue here. This is now looking at Middletown specifically, and you get a sense of who our tenants are there, and how much square footage they are renting, what their rent amounts are. You see that they're beyond affordable. Essentially what the price is per square feet, and when those agreements started and ended. In some cases, you'll see that the tenants came in at an earlier time, maybe with us in another location, like Rosa Coke, for example. She was in our New Windsor location when that was a real diverse group of different tenants. And so someone's been here before that, and they are currently started at a later time. You see many of them expire this summer. Really, they all do. June, June, July, and August. One is the end of December of this year.
This is Middletown.
This is all Middletown.
Did you put a title on that?
Yes, and that's, I apologize, I didn't realize that. Of course, this came up with searching the tabs.
Yeah.
But I need to add the titles at the top. This is also set up, it's rudimentary, but to show, here are the rents that we're receiving for all these subleases, and adding it up, you're seeing in this case about $1,466 a month. And then we restate what the building lease, what we're paying, in this case, $5,600 a month. And then you're seeing what our net monthly rent is that we are paying. In this case, is we're paying another $4,100 a month beyond what we're receiving in sublease payments.
Question
for a year, that's about $50,000 a year.
So question there, does that include any of the carrying costs, electric, phone, internet, garbage?
Not in these numbers, no, absolutely not.
It's
So
something to
in
think
addition to
about,
that.
maybe a P&L, profit and loss.
Sure.
That would include some of the carrying costs in the future presentation. That would help us make understand the complexities of each one.
Absolutely.
I know this is like just a draft at this point. We didn't really have a discussion beforehand in regards to this, but it's something that, while this is true numbers, it looks like for rental, there's obviously additional costs.
Yeah. So I'm gonna come back, after we go through these leases, I'll come back and talk specifically about some issues in these ones. Next one is New Windsor. And again, we're talking about three different buildings. A couple of them are split up, so we have multiple tenants in the Informed Lightwork. So these are mostly, I would say, also in the fashion manufacturing pod. I'll start from the bottom. Besides T-Set, we have Seco silk screeners. Mello is a manufacturer of mostly bags, handbags, backpacks. They're also making, thanks to some of the equipment that he's been made available to him through the Accelerator, he's doing new products like guitar straps and stuff. And Limberry is a handbag manufacturer based in Italy, and I'll come back to them. Informed Lightworks, they're kind of misplaced there, frankly. They were in Newburgh and were asked to move out because Zeal was coming in. They were at 605 Broadway. So they're in literally a garage space. I mean, it's a garage door and it's a very small space. But what they're doing is designing high-end light fixtures, essentially, using LED. These guys have another business that they're employed by, and that's how they know each other. And this is, a side venture of theirs. They're the only ones that are a little displaced in that sense. Again, we have agreements expiring this year for all of them, from June to December. And you're seeing, we're receiving a little over $2,000 a month in rent payments, but we're leasing these spaces for an aggregate total of over $6,000 a month. So this, in terms of just rent, this Accelerator location is also costing us about $50,000 a year in net rent that we're paying out.
And in those net rent, Bill, it looks like it ranges anywhere from $4.24 that we pay, all the way up to $23.81 on the master sheet, the first sheet.
Yes, sir.
So obviously, another question or something that I would have is, in a future presentation, if you could get some estimates of what the market rent for those types of buildings would be, and if we're paying at, below, or above market, that would be also good to know for the group, besides the carrying costs. Thank you. You guys, please feel free, start asking questions, because this is where it's, you got to feel comfortable with what we're ingesting. So I don't want to ask all the questions. Yeah, and you could just touch base with the realtor, or
Absolutely.
just do a quick analysis of some like buildings and see whatever.
Yeah, no question. The next, so that was New Windsor. I apologize, but I had a label, so I'll fix that as well. Okay, next one is New Windsor. I'm sorry, Newburgh. Two buildings side by side. These landlords are B4 Holdings. That's the Bloomer family. Mostly father and two sons. And we leased both those buildings from them, 603 and 605. We have interview effects, handbags, Rondon, footwear, as you see. Shelley Scott is a designer. She went to FIT. She designs her own line of clothes. And then you have Zeal, who again is basically was kind of the darling of the Accelerator. It was just, they were very excited by them. Their founder founded something called Shapeways, which is a way to have fulfillment on 3D printing orders, and it was very successful. And this is this on-demand fashion manufacturing business is what Marlene Vogelar started a couple of years ago, and former administration really worked to bring them to Newburgh. So they are occupying, Zeal is all of 605. There is an upstairs space that still needs a little further renovation that has come up in the recent months. But generally, they're occupying all the downstairs space at 605. And next door, 603 is occupied by Shelley Scott London. That's Newburgh. We are paying, you see for the two buildings, $10,500 a month for Newburgh. $10,500 for 605, where Zeal is, and 603 Broadway, $2,750 a month.
So you said in one of the buildings, there's upstairs space that's available?
Yes, for Zeal, it's 605. And there's interest in that space from one of our other tenants, and it's that position. We just go to the last location here.
On that one there, I noticed a discrepancy between what we're charging from $4.04 all the way up to $16. So obviously, we want to understand that a little bit better when we can. And we also want to understand the accuracy of the square footages. I'm not sure if you or Kelly have measured or walked or just reaffirmed that. That's something to make sure that what they're leasing is what they're actually occupying.
Yeah.
Not knowing that and not instigating or inferring that they are not in those areas is something to just double check, but when we have chances to.
Absolutely. Okay, that's Newburgh. Last one, we just some green columns. That's Warwick. Again, this is what they call the Manor House. It's across from Drowned Lands Brewery on the campus there, the former prison site. Again, it was renovated at the cost and expense of the town, with a $1 per lease term, rent. And, but we are responsible for utilities there, and, we are there to serve those accelerator clients, or support them, I should say. So that's Warwick. That one you see is a real net monthly rent received by us, because we pay so little out. So the rent that we receive is, I don't want to say it's gravy, because again, we're supporting this accelerator pod in various ways. See, it's one where there's actually though a net rent being received. And the last sheet is Highland Falls, where you see there are no current tenants, 195 Main Street, renting over 16,000 square feet, and we've been paying $20,000 a month there since September 20. So that's the source of the falls. Let me go through this roster really quickly. I did a little of this already, but I'll do just to tell you who we have. So, fashion manufacturing pod, again, Zeal, they did make on demand. And you did get, I do recall, when I was watching the meeting where you had an accelerator presentation, so you did hear some of these. Zeal is on demand fashion manufacturing, rundown footwear, as you see, handbags, inner beauty effects, handbags. She also has a purpose to her business where she wants it to benefit organizations to support women. So we're working with her right now, trying to help her plan a market for good, as she calls it, where we're trying to help her promote it and bring in people to buy tables and such to be part of this market. I'm going to tell you who we've been doing. Shelley Scott, we've been trying to help her acquire other sewing machines from other areas of the accelerator that were being unused. We try to support them in a few different ways, trying to connect her with some that would help market her goods as well, her product, because sales could be better, so that's that as well. Mello, again, this is Jim Melville, who came from Stuyvesant, New York, was recruited by the previous administration to come here. He's probably one of the larger employers that we have there. He's got about 14 or 15 people there. He has grown since he's come. He absolutely utilizes equipment that's been furnished by the accelerator, namely a large scale laser cutter that cuts fabric. That's what allowed him to Mello to be creative and go into pick up new product lines like these guitar straps and his laser engraves his company's name in it and all of that. That's all because of what's available. There's also an embroidery machine that he and other tenants use that's located in the Mello space as well. I'm going to come back to Lombardi. Seco, they do silkscreening, as I mentioned, all sorts, right, on bottles, on clothes, whatever it might be. Inform Lightworks, really their business through the accelerator is called Lightsome Studios. Again, they're trying to develop high-end light fixtures. We've been trying to help them. Really, they're like many clients that are looking for some guidance, some accountability. They want to be held accountable. So I have had regular calls with most of these tenants, trying to find out where they could use support, trying to provide that when I could, or with other contacts of ours that I could reach out to for that help. And also try and help them with some planning, milestones, goal setting, things like that. It's just because it's what they're looking for. For as long as we're able to do it, and try to provide that. Let me go back to Lombardi now. Lombardi, again, down the hill in New Windsor from our main offices, they had a space next to Seco Silkscreen, and they're based in Italy. It's a luxury handbag company based in Italy. They have affiliates in New York City that they especially work with for Fashion Week and such, and they'll develop some samples of handbags and things and let people. Because Italy was on lockdown through through COVID, they haven't really utilized the space. The owners and the folks they were going to send stayed in Italy. The affiliates in New York City kind of ended up staying there. When I came on board, I reached out to everyone, of course, and the folks that represent them from New York City agreed to come up and meet with me in their space. First time I had been in there, frankly. I met them there. Well, the next door neighbor Seco Silkscreen, was occupying that space that they've been renting. And we all discovered that at the time. And it turns out that Seco was promised the ability while Lombardi was away to use that space, and that it was okay through the accelerator management. But Lombardi was never told that. Actually, Lombardi was told, hey, we need to put a couple things in for a couple of weeks, if you don't mind. They said that's fine. It was not about another tenant moving and using that space. So now we have that other tenant, Seco, who's completely moved into that space and utilizing it. Limburger, who's come in, has been paying rent all along. I will say that they're not fulfilling the terms of their sublease, which say that they're in there to create jobs, so that's very clear. However, we want to try and accommodate them if they're looking to come back, and if the board, is pleased with that. So just the last piece here, Paul, is that the one space that could be available is at 605 Broadway upstairs from Zeal. And I showed them that space. They did like it very much, with very minimal even cleanup, not even build out. They could go in there at least for the purposes of occupying that space and having that home. But I made it clear to them that that's at the pleasure of this board and how you want to proceed with that. They also claim that some of their materials, like handbags, were actually stolen. We certainly asked everyone about that when we inquired, but we encouraged them to file a police report on that. But that's not frankly, it's not our responsibility. That's in the lease as well. I did pass it by the county attorney's office for feedback there. So we do have one issue there where if we're going to accommodate everyone, we have to move them. If we do, there's probably going to be some expense, or at least a consideration on the landlord's part to help us do that at little to no cost. Or we can tell Seco to move out and these guys go back in there. Truth be told, Limberti, after seeing it, they'd be happier at 605, but I told them it was not a done deal, by far.
Yeah, Limberti doesn't sound like a startup type company. It sounds like they're well established.
They're not.
So why are they in there?
And this is the company that previous manager went to visit Middle. So they were pretty enamored by them and they wanted to visit them. But I agree, it's not a startup in any way, but they want to have a smaller operation. The way I interpret it was mostly, again, for Fashion Week and such, where they make up small samples of handbags and they use them, but not
But a
really
company
large
like that, I
production.
think they could do that on their own. Hope from an accelerator.
I think that idea of having a location of presence, and originally it was going to be close to the city, but they were convinced to come up here. I think that's part of the appeal, but I agree they don't fit the mold of really what our accelerator plans to. So that's one of the issues there that we do want to deal with. Let's see. I go back to this second page of the roster here. Okay, Exasude. Now that's a young woman who designs, formulates, and produces hand creams and such to help with eczema. And she is very much interested in taking one of the empty spaces in Middletown. That one of our clients moved from that space to Warwick, Honey Buzz, and Farm Bodies, have two businesses in one. They moved to the Warwick Accelerator. They're doing more CBD infusion type work, so they have an empty pod at Middletown. Exasude would like to move in there. Alternate e-source, they did a lot of security cameras and access points and such that exist in Middletown. They do a number of different things, and Tanya Lewitt there has actually a few businesses out of there. They haven't, Exasude has been coming to the Accelerator off and on. Alternate e-source, they have not really been present. Asterism, I was referring to this earlier, they're a nutraceutical manufacturer, kind of a small scale pharmaceutical manufacturer. They're the only tenant that in any way is using the clean room, ISO 10,000 clean room that was put in. It's significant expense. They're using that to do some of their manufacturing of encapsulated products, essentially, encapsulated nutritional products. That gentleman has family in Japan. Actually, his children live there, and so he spends a considerable amount of time there in Japan as well. He and I have met a couple times since he's been back. He too wants that other room that Farm Body, Honey Buzz occupied that's now empty, because he'd like to do some work in there as well. Drone Tech, I know this gentleman from years ago, from just another connection when starting this business, and I work with the Orange County Partnership. He and I have been trying to meet, and he's the one accelerator I had not met in person, even though I know him. He's had to cancel a couple of times. I will say that space, when I peek in his space, it's pretty messy. There's nothing really happening there. It looks like storage there. So there's not much happening in terms of this business there. EC Media, this is Everett Colley. This is someone that many people in the business community know because he does a lot of photography, videography, a lot of other work for Leadership Orange and the other nonprofits and such here. He has both a small office and he has a studio space for his photography work. He too would like to move into a slightly larger space that Honey Buzz and Farm Body had as well. Goats in a Coat, that's a candle maker. She used to be in New Windsor, Stephanie Falsetta, and she's been in Middletown for a couple of years now. She's there often, sometimes at night, but she does seem to be one of the tenants that's utilizing, her space more often there. She does production in there. She has heaters to heat up chunks of wax and things like that. That tends to contribute to the high utility costs we have in some of these locations. That's one example. Infirmary media, that's another one of these kind of misnomers. They're really go as New York podcasts. They have a studio in the Middletown Accelerator where they actually record podcasts and other, videos and other recorded segments for people. That's there. They're in there off and on. They're looking for more support than they've gotten as well. Key coders, this is a gentleman who works for Google, high-level employee at Google, and his wife, Jonathan Black, his wife Tina, teaches tech and coding for a Montessori school in Bergen County. They really wanted to. This is, some of the board members don't know me being on this soapbox as much as I typically am, but I've been pushing growing the technology sector in our area. And a lot of that is some part of the strategy is through growing tech education, helping to build digital literacy in our young people. That's exactly the mission of Key Coders. We're trying to teach coding classes. They've caught on in Bergen County. There seems to be more of an acceptance for it, and parents who value it. Here, not so much. They've been trying more with where they live and how they're built on Accelerator. Not the same. But wonderful people. And frankly, I've been meeting with them via Zoom every week, developing a technology attraction plan with them. So I utilize that. Red Tree Hill, their business, another misnomer. Their business is really that's in the Accelerator. It's Clothes Line, Lyne, one word, Clothes Line. They are a real startup that has been working with an accelerator in Austin. What they have sometimes said, and I'll say this publicly here, a real accelerator, meaning that they have a program, a curriculum. They're getting, again, goal setting milestones, and holding them accountable. They've been going through that. And then when I first met with them, they said, we're at the point where we're ready to start raising funds. We need to get in front of investors. So we got them in front of a couple of investors. Actually, at the Crowdy Lane location, we had a pitch session where they pitched and we moderated it all, and they were very happy. Been providing similar type of support to them so far. They're in Middletown. They're not in there physically much either. So it's like tumbleweeds there a lot of times when we go there. If the tenants don't know I'm coming and want to be ready in that sense, show up. So it's definitely quiet there. Next one is Warwick. Then we have two businesses, one in one basically, Body at Rest or Farm Body. That's the tenant that moved out of Middletown and moved to Warwick when it was a better fit. She partnered with one of the other Middletown business owners, Tanya Lewitt from Ultimate E-Source. Together, they're partners in Honey Buns there. And Junonia, really known as Scripted Fragrance. That's I see my typo there. That's a candle maker that actually received a lot of acclaim. She was highlighted on CBS this Sunday morning, and her business really took off from there. We've been helping her. She's looking for staff, so we've been helping her with that, putting some ads out there. She's also looking to do an event to promote the business, kind of ribbon cutting. So we've been helping to support her with that as well. That's Warwick. Let me just see some other issues on my agenda, and I want to make sure I wait so then we can have a real dialogue. So in general, everyone, there's a lack of programming of any curriculum, goals and milestones being met, and in a sense of accountability. And that's one where we're missing, not insisting on that for our own purposes. But as I've kind of referred to before, we're also letting down these clients who came in. A lot of times they work another job, but this is their passion. But sometimes, and I'm not saying it's certainly the responsibility is on us, but they're looking for that accountability. Somebody to ask, well, where are you with this plan? How are you doing getting to this certain milestone? So they're all looking for that. In New Windsor specifically, we have the space conflict that I mentioned. We have expiring leases and subleases. We've had some, in addition to the handbag, claim there. We've had other evidence of some break-ins over the last year plus with some of the spaces in New Windsor. There are cameras, better locks going in, some of that stuff, but that's one of the issues. In Newburgh, we have expiring subleases, and we have this issue of potentially building out the upstairs at 605. In Middletown, again, we have a few different clients that are looking to take the one empty space that would be an upgrade to them. I also have some businesses that I've met either through other clients or just in my work out there. People say that I'd love to become a part of the Accelerator. So I do have some potential new applicants. maintenance. Really, we may not be ready for that. But we've also at the Middletown space had maintenance issues. There have been leaks in the ceiling resulting in buckets that have been collecting water for months when I first got there. And we really, held their feet to the fire when it comes to that. I called the landlord and spoke to the maintenance guys, and they've been following up on 2 big leaks. And now in that clean room, there's kind of a pinhole leak in the compressor system in there. So somebody has to take a look at that. They're trying to find kind of a more cost-effective way for leasing the who's involved in. But there are some maintenance issues with that. We had a door handle next to that was falling off its handle, security issue there. But once we kind of stepped it up with the landlord and the maintenance folks on site there, we're getting much better response. That's Middletown, service maintenance issues. Warwick, we had an issue with the internet. We mentioned it, that did result in, we found a better solution. There was a one-time fee of the technician coming in, that was $1,000. We also, it's an old building in the in-house, they did a great job, it's beautiful, but there are some holes that where there's air and rodents and such can get into the ground level there. We've had some of that, so we had pest control, we've had to pay for it. And that's one because with the low rent, we're covering that kind of stuff. And in Highland Falls, obviously, we got off the ground there, and I have been going, you've heard that in prior reports of mine, in part because of my passion for my belief in trying to grow the tech sector here, plus just acknowledging the fact that we have an amazing institution in West Point right there. A lot of people have theorized that we can't grow tech here because we don't have our own research institution. We sure do. With these centers of excellence focused on these different areas, that would be from robotics, artificial intelligence, whatever it might be, real opportunities to partner with them in some way, whether it's this IDA, the Accelerator program, or someone else through the county. I have certainly been going on trying to, I would say, assess the opportunity we have and what are the threats to it, and some other factors that make it a challenge that we all know. And I wanted to at least be able to talk about those things with the board. Because again, I do see the opportunities, but it's complicated there. Our lease being, the most fundamental challenge we have there, at $20,000 cost of tenants. So those are really kind of the grouping of the issues that we have that need to be addressed one way or another. But long term, we have expirations of subleases and leases with our landlords that we've be in a position to make decisions on this. That's a real quick summary.
One question, Bill, if you can put together in the future a vacancy report, so that we know the square footages by facility of what's vacant, or I'll say eligible for potential occupancy.
Okay.
So we know that, we can do vacancy rates off of that, we can do, various things in relation to having that data. That would be helpful, whether you do it on the master sheet or on the individual, or leave it to your discretion. It's something to understand better, is what's vacant and what's available.
Thank you. Not sure how you want to start from there.
Well, yeah, I'm just wondering what kind of criteria we have for accepting businesses into the Accelerator program. I mean, the whole concept of the Accelerator is, taking young startup businesses that need some help with, infrastructure, building, internet, whatever type services, but at some point, they should be get to the point where they can fly on their own and not need the Accelerator. Absolutely. I'm just wondering what kind of, do they have to submit a business plan? What's the plan for getting them to where they need to be to
Sure.
get out of it?
Well, first of all, I've seen it in several past Accelerator presentations that they were always stressed, management would, that work, it's not for startups, it's for it's an accelerator, not an incubator. We're not taking some sort of innovation, trying to grow a business out of that, see what you can do. It's supposed to be companies that have proof of concept that are actually making sales, is one of the groups there. And that's not the case for all of them, for sure. A lot of them are actual startups, they're trying to get something off the ground. So I think right off the bat,
Well, either way, there's got to be some sort of a progression or
no question. And the other idea is that 3 years is the time limit there. That you're supposed to be here 3 years, allowed to grow, and then you graduate out. In the end, we were starting to hear terms like graduating in, where the concept was, all right, well, because when clients did graduate out, so to speak, the only ones I know of left the county for the most part. Unshattered was one that was quite famous, one of the early ones. They went to Dutchess County, and they're in Ulster since then. So apparently you can't dictate where they go. So that's one issue. But then now they started talking about graduating in where. Mellow, for example, at New Windsor, Zeal at 605 Broadway, the idea that, well, before too long, they'll take over those leases and they'll stay put, but they will become the direct tenants of our neighborhoods. But, you know, there's not a lot of documentation, and there's certainly no profiles for each of them and where they are with these milestones. It's just, it really was thin in that regard. You know, there wasn't a real curriculum. A lot of it was loose, just like what I'm finding with the costs per job. I saw the numbers reported, flashy numbers, and then I actually asked the former staff, and they were still here, how do they come up with these numbers? And nobody could really come up with the answer. So hopefully we find it in that documentation where those numbers came up from. So I think there were expectations, there was dialogue, there was a kind of a you know, a methodology they would go through, but I don't see much of that formalized at all. It needs to.
I think, yeah, exactly. That's the problem.
How many of these businesses have been in place for more than 3 years?
So we can use the column on the individual location, these summaries of all our tenants. You can look at the column towards the right, original date of occupancy. And it does tell you when a lot of these clients came in. Several in 16 and 17. I don't frankly know if there was discussion about COVID being kind of a, you know, a free pass, and hey, this year doesn't count. I have not heard that. I can imagine it, but I'm just, I have no knowledge of that. But otherwise, you have, let's see, at least 3 that have been here since 16. One in 17. Another 4 in 18. And then the rest are since. And there's been turnover. You know, I've been visiting these sites in my role for the past several years, and met plenty of companies years ago that aren't there any longer.
I think since we have some of this info, when it's in the form, you may be able to make another tab, like an aging report with the older tenants there to the newer ones. You'd be able to import that in so that at a quick glance, instead of looking at 5 pages, we can look at one and say, okay, these are the oldest tenants to the newest tenants, right? And it doesn't need to be based upon location. It could be based upon original start date, right? And then we would understand that a little bit. I mean, the data's already in there, it's already typed in, so it's a matter of just sorting it and plugging it in somehow as a alternative view, I'll say, and looking at it.
Yeah, I think Mike's point was good about including carrying costs and ideas.
Yeah, because the part that's somewhat troublesome, I'll say, is that obviously tenants that are there a longer period of time and are not paying for utilities or for internet or for garbage collection or for cleaning, at a certain period of time, that has to be an expectation of someone who started a business 4, 5, 6 years ago, that they have to start graduating into those some of those costs somehow. I'm not sure exactly how it happens, whether they stay in an accelerator or they move on to another facility. But more importantly, I think, you know, there's only so much, and I'll use the term loosely, that can be subsidized for a period of time. Those are very, very basic costs of doing business. And it's, while it's nice to be able to afford the ability to give to certain tenants, others need to be able to understand that that's a known business. It's just like accounting is for filing taxes or you know, driving your car back and forth to work, or you know, there's distinct expenses that have to be realized and borne by whether it's tenants or new businesses eventually. So it's something to look at and understand. Carrying costs are going to be key because then we'll have a better picture of the true profit and or loss that we're expending on that. And we're gonna need that, I would think, pretty soon, and I would say I would use the expenses for the year, if you can interpolate them through the half year, or one of these last years, because we have to start thinking about maybe doing some budgeting for 2022. And we need to understand what our carrying costs are in order to figure out if we have the capable funds to expend into budget for. So that's going to be the key point by location. And then obviously totaling it up into a total, so we understand.
So I think one of my kind of overarching questions is, how do we go about even broaching these, especially some of these smaller issues? I'm wondering, do you have to, and I know it won't be at this meeting, do you have to deal with the idea of, do we want to be in the accelerator business at all first? Is that what we have to first come to terms with? And then if you made a decision there saying, all right, we're going to try and move out of this if we can, so everything is decided through that lens? Or do we not have to figure that out yet? Can we just deal with what we have to deal with now? I'm not sure exactly the best way for the board to go about getting in a position to deal with all of this.
Well, what I'm thinking about is that no matter what we do, it's gonna be a board decision. Okay, so it's gonna be something that staff will present to the board, and we'll have to make an informed decision. Yes, no, maybe so, either way, up or down, left or right. The way I'm thinking about it, personally, is that I'm thinking that we have to answer some of the short-term questions. And I think one of the ways to do that is to understand facility by facility, as our lease with our landlords come due, are those leases competitive? Are they above market, at market, below market? Is there a delta there? Meaning, is our landlord willing to lower their costs to us so that we can continue to maintain them? Or is their cost going up with a new lease? And then we have another decision to make. Can we afford actually going up? You know, there's a lot of ups and downs with the negotiations. I think that identifying those ones, I think New Windsor's ones are the ones that I noticed are probably coming to be the earliest. And then taking it from that step down to the subtenant step, where you have to identify, okay, what is this subtenant doing? How long have they been at or below or above market? What, if they were gonna stay, how long of a term are we gonna allow them to stay or not? Or are we gonna ask them to graduate? I think we have to give proper notice if we're gonna ask them to leave, so that they have the ability to. Are the carrying costs need to be starting to be shared? You know, if we are gonna stay in that facility or in that business. So there's a lot of question marks, and those question marks are gonna eventually have to be answered by by staff and presented to the board so that we can make an informed decision. I hate to say it, but literally facility by facility, lease by lease, subtenant by subtenant. Because we're gonna be transparent with it. You know, if I'll give it, and I'm not looking at any numbers, but I'll steal it for instance. If we're paying $9 a square foot and someone and our subtenant's paying $1 a square foot, and they've been in there for 6 years, that's been an unbelievable subsidy to that tenant for a period of time. And it's about time either they have to move towards having us break even, whether they stay in the facility or not, or our costs have to come down from our landlord, or maybe they, like you said, directly lease that facility if it's like a standalone directly from that landlord. I know that in a couple instances, I think 2, right, Warwick and New Windsor, the landlord is a municipality. So they have probably a little bit of a different motive than I would say a private entity who's looking for a for-profit. So is there any way to partner with the municipalities to lower the costs? I think the Warwick example is not a bad example. I mean, our carrying costs for rent is more than we're making, but obviously we are carrying costs. We have to look at that. And maybe they want to be in that business. Maybe they want to be the landlord to our subtenants. And we just help provide a service. If and when the phone rings, if we can make networking capabilities, points of contact, hey, you never know. Maybe one of them will want to build a building and come to us for IDA benefits. Right. Wouldn't that be a great home run? You know? So, you know, there's a lot of different things, but I think we're going to have to rely on staff to provide us with the info and have us vote upon it with the proper info in front of us at the time. And I think we have some pressing ones, from at least what I see, in New Windsor on the right foot. You know, I mean, pretty quick, I think we have to, as early as potentially this upcoming meeting, potentially go on some stuff, right?
Vincent.
Oh, yeah, Vince.
I echoed what Mike have just said, but before I go a little bit further into that, I commend Mr. Warranty for what he's been doing. In fact, he is very dedicated in what he does, and in fact, the tenants, I think out of 70 tenants, if stock mentioned, I think talk to maybe all of them, except one or two. And eventually, yes, they are now in a better position. They are happy now, but it will be also a good thing to have a short survey of our customers, tenants, eventually to see exactly what type of input, what they think. Satisfaction will be recorded as we go on, just from the tenant's point of view, the tenants. And as I said, Bill is doing a good job. I mean, I'm satisfied. I really like the way he's coordinating this daily. I mean, it's a good thing, the way I see it. So I commend him for what he's doing. Yes. But a short survey would be good, just to see responsive, how the tenants respond for that to questions. I will help to bring up a short survey if you want me to come up with questions for that.
Yeah.
That will be in a record too.
More information makes sense, it always makes more sense. One concern also that I have, and as I'm thinking about these, I'll throw them out, but please chime in, is that I think that some of these leases, we have to do the maintenance. And I'm sorry, but we are not a maintenance company. You know what I mean? I hate to say this, but every little thing that the landlord doesn't do, and it's borne upon the IDA because of either the way our lease is written or the way that the agreement was made, really puts a burden on us that's questionable. I mean, it's one thing if, something needs to happen, like a doorknob needs to go and fix it. But what happens if you have a major issue in the building, that needs to have some major renovations to it? We don't have any of that planned for. I mean, we're not the maintenance company. So that's pretty serious, unfortunately, I think our landlords may have entered into these leases, putting all the burden on us. It sure does feel that way. And that's a concern because we don't have the bandwidth, the capabilities, or the manpower to do all that. I mean, everything we do could potentially have to be able to procure it. It's a quote. It's not like it's just, hey, call Joe the maintenance man, he's gonna come fix it. We don't have a Joe maintenance man. So.
Okay.
So I'm thinking about this, gals, I think that we are gonna have to ask Bill to provide us with some info for the upcoming decisions we have to make on subtenants and lease arrangements with New Windsor. I think you're gonna need to get that to us a week ahead of time before our meeting, so we're all looking at that specific question. And then we can, get some questions answered, and if we want, or if it's so deemed necessary, we could potentially get a resolution to vote up, down, yes or no, left or right, to figure out what we want to do on a specific, whether it's a subtenant agreement or whether if it's an actual agreement with the landlord. In between that period of time, with Bill being our head person or our head agent, he'll have to have a conversation with all parties involved, with the subtenants, with the landlords. In some cases, these are going to be municipalities to better understand where they're coming from. But more importantly, to let them know that the decision is going to be forthwith. We're going to have to make a decision, and we're going to base it upon the best information that we have at the time. That's the only way I know how to potentially come to a resolution on some of the shorter term ones. The longer term ones, maybe we should vision plan a little bit longer, we'll have a little more time. But I think on some of these, and I think that the winter ones are pretty soon. I mean, we're talking
And we,
Yeah, so,
Yes, I think that we would have, but we have some subtenants arrangements that are past due. Now, we can always have them in holdover status. I mean, that's not unheard of in a leasing world where you have them in a holdover status, whether you keep them at the same amount or you charge them, a percentage above that, it's based upon time, based upon what their escalation clauses were. Those are all options. I don't know what those leases say off the top of my head, but there may be, in a good lease, there's a holdover clause that talks about 110, 120% of the existing cost.
Right.
I don't know if those are in there. So,
I don't recall any of those types of laws.
and to Langdon will have, we have to solve as a board, and I think we're gonna look for some guidance. How do we write a lease? Or a subtenant lease. Obviously, when we're dealing with landlords, they're gonna be writing the lease and we'll be reviewing it and either executing it or not. But subtenant agreements are gonna be borne by this organization to push it out to the subtenants. So that's something that we're gonna need to give guidance, and eventually expertise on from whoever we hire as a consulting attorney to make sure that they have lease experience. Writing of a good lease with all the provisions that we always want to have in them, termination clauses, performance clauses, anything in between security clause, all the good stuff that's in there. Indemnifying us to make sure that we're not held liable, those type of things, whatever the good ways to do that. So that's a key point of when we're hiring counsel, that we have to make sure that they have some knowledge of writing and executing the leases.
and candidly, and we'll have to probably do this in an attorney-client session, yesterday's action in county court may have some implications for a variety of facility matters, but I'm not gonna get into that publicly, then we'll reach a pilot on it based on the guilty.
Does anyone know, do we require, of our subtenants to do any conflict of interest?
I don't see anything like that on file.
I'm not examining any of the subjects that we have.
So obviously, we want to make sure as a board that we don't, our staff doesn't have a conflict with any one of these tenants.
Right.
But I'm not sure I'm not sure what the right thing to say is in regards to tenants to tenants or tenants to us. We got to make sure that, for instance, the lady who does the eczema. Well, I know people who have eczema, and maybe I'd like to buy some, but I don't want to buy it at a discount. If it's going to be for sale, we should know about it, and I'd like to buy it maybe at the retail price of what everyone that would commonly on the street have to buy it for. Those type of things. We want to make sure that nobody takes advantage of a situation, that no one gets a special deal, none of that stuff. All the stuff that we know ethically. We all know each other, so and I trust everybody. But it's more importantly that we have to make sure that, if there's opportunities out there, maybe we can help support some of them. The other thing is, as potentially they need to graduate and maybe find their own locations. We can be a good networking opportunity, whether we're with our partner agencies like the Chamber of Commerce or the partnership or commercial real estate brokers that are out there. Some of these numbers are pretty decent. If they're paying us $8, $9 a square foot, they may be able to pay $8, $9 a square foot elsewhere. And that's what the whole thing is. Eventually, hopefully, maybe they'll be able to build something. It's the commercial tax base. I'd love to be able to assist one of them in building a 5,000 square foot facility. Wouldn't that be great? We can give them some very basic incentives that's allowed underneath our programs, and maybe they can afford it. We help with site selection, or our partners can. There's ways to have some success on this, I think, but there's also ways that we're going to have to really look at our costs. Having utility bills in the thousands of dollars, garbage bills in the $500s of dollars, internet bills into the hundreds of dollars. It gets to a point where, we've got to let them be a business. They have to, those are natural born costs that anyone has. I don't think anybody can expect that they're going to receive free utilities for the rest of their life or free internet for the rest of their life.
Certainly not manufacturers.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So basically, again, in my question about how we go about these, basically you're saying with any of these issues, could be the linearity issues that we have to provide you all the right information and bring it to the board in a manner where what the decision is being asked for you to be made is clear, right? So I bring these to you as soon as the next meeting, as long as you have the right information and I know how we wanna, what we're asking of you.
Yeah, I would say yes, because we're gonna make the decision as a board. It's no longer gonna be a managing director making a decision or, as an agent, we don't afford you the ability to make a decision. But when we do have a CEO / person, I can see that person's gonna have that same push that we're gonna ask them to come to the board, so the board can make a decision, and some of them are not gonna be monetarily involved. It's just gonna be a yes or no, or, do we do this, do we not do this? But I think it's gonna be a board decision. I don't see it, we're gonna be as transparent as we can, and I don't think we're gonna afford the capabilities of a managing director / CEO / executive director to be able to do that absent a board approval. Especially when there's costs involved. I think that we put those measures in place where all costs come in front of the board, and it's public, we look at them, we vote on them, and we pass them like we did the last 2 months. I think that's the easiest and the best way to do it, and it literally puts everything on the table. I know it makes for a long meeting, but it's something that I think has to be done, and as we get better at it, I think we'll shorten that time period up, and I think part of that will be some of these recurring payments. If we're saying yes to a lease and the board's agreeing to a lease, there's no need to have to be presented every single month to the board. You can say, these are the ones that the board has already previously approved, and it's for 12 months, or, whatever it is. So it makes those things go a little bit quicker or easier. What do you think? I think it's gotta be board decisions when it comes down to leases and yeses and nos and occupancies and that type of stuff.
Oh, that's my objective, gather more information, so you have all the facts that you need, and put you in a position to know what we're asking of you.
Yeah, and I would think that we would do the same type of agenda, where if we have people that are coming in front of us, they would come to the top, and then we would do our local business and this business towards the middle or towards the end. Obviously, notice the landlords and notice the subtenants is gonna be key. We don't wanna make an adverse effect, but we also wanna make sure that, we're giving people proper notice whether we're gonna continue on with them, or if we're gonna raise rents, if we're gonna ask them to vacate in a certain period of time. Those kind of things.
We're at almost an hour now
Yeah,
for this. My main objective here was to review all this with you, make sure everyone had a handle, knew what, who was where, and put those issues out there. And I expect the next board meeting to ask for some movement on a couple of these, but with more information.
if you get it to us ahead of time, so we're not looking at it that night, I think that makes it a lot easier.
Absolutely.
Because if we have questions, you can always buzz Bill and say, I don't understand this analysis, or you have a question about this, or can you provide this additional info, so that we have the info? And then literally, it'll almost be like a project presentation. Here's the info, what's the benefit? What's the analysis? We gotta make a decision whether we move forward or we don't move forward, whether we ask for something more. It's gonna be tough in the beginning because a lot of it's gonna involve negotiations, and we're not allowing an agent like in your position to directly negotiate down, we don't have that approval authority at this point. So it's something it may take an extra month, I hate to say that, but sometimes, quick decisions aren't always the best decisions.
Very good. Anything else anyone want to ask or cover?
Can I take 5 minutes and quick attorney phone session before you're adjourned, just to talk about yesterday's play of the deal?
Yeah, that makes sense. Before we go into attorney-client privilege or executive session for that discussion, there's a potential, with some of the stuff we recently passed, we may need a resolution. I don't know if it can wait till the 3rd Tuesday in July, We don't have the information today, but it's, I think, on some of the ones that we recently passed, it may need an actual resolution or additional resolution. We may have to call a special meeting, but if you do, we'll poll the board and see what the best time. We'll probably just do a quick virtual one. It'll probably be less than 15 minutes. But we're waiting for bond counsel to determine some of that stuff. It may be out there, so maybe, I hate to say it, within the next week or two.
We haven't had one of those in 48 hours, so.
Yeah.
If we get schedule special meetings, at least, I wouldn't mind you guys to miss it off.
Thank you. All right, so we'll make a motion to enter into executive session for the purpose of.
Be a meeting under section 108 of the Public Officers Law, any matter made confidential by federal or state law, which is
I'll say yes to that.
Any motion? Second? Second by Paul. Charlie?
Yes.
Thierry?
Yes.
Dalvin? Savage?
Yes.
And ODOT.
Yes.
Passes. Dean, can you